You're fired. 2 words. That's all it took to crack the foundation of everything I'd built. I sat across from Caleb Monroe, my boss for nearly 8 years, as he delivered the verdict with the same tone he probably used to order lunch. We were in the executive wing of Everline Capital, a top-tier private equity firm in downtown Chicago. My role as a senior portfolio strategist was being phased out due to internal restructuring. Your severance will be more than fair, Caleb added, eyes locked on his laptop. 4 months' salary and full medical coverage through the quarter. I didn't cry. Lena Caldwell doesn't cry, especially not in front of a man who just erased a decade of 70-hour work weeks with a single conversation. I stood, adjusted my navy blazer and walked out of that glass box with every ounce of dignity I had left. Behind me, I could hear the quiet ripple of whispers already making their way through the open concept floor. That's how it worked in this world. Your downfall was everyone else's happy hour topic. At my desk, I packed 10 years of loyalty into a single box, a framed photo of my dog, a coffee mug from my first big deal, and a small snake plan I'd somehow kept alive. My phone buzzed, of course. Is it true? My cousin Sabrina asked, feigning surprise laced with smugness. You really got fired? News travels fast, I replied, voice calm. Oh, Lena, wow, you know how Aunt Valerie is about appearances. Yes. My Aunt Valerie Caldwell, founder and chairwoman of Caldwell Strategic Holdings, had always seen failure as contagious. And now I, her 33-year-old niece who used to be the pride of the family, was apparently the virus. I'll figure it out, I said, ending the call before she could offer more fake sympathy. But figuring it out wasn't as easy as it had always been. The recession had slammed into the finance industry like a freight train. Every interview ended the same. Overqualified, not quite the right fit. We're going in a different direction. 2 months in, desperate and tired, I found myself sitting in my aunt's sprawling corner office in Midtown, the skyline of Chicago glinting behind her like a reminder of everything I no longer had. I just need something temporary, I said quietly. Any opening. I'll prove myself. And she didn't even look up. I didn't build Caldwell Holdings by handing out charity, she said. Aunt Valerie, please. Until what? She cut in, finally meeting my gaze with a glint of ice. Until you disappoint me too? And just like that, I knew. I wasn't just out of a job. I was out of a family. Until you embarrass this family further. Sabrina warned me this would happen. She said you were too ambitious, too reckless with your investments. My stomach twisted. Of course she had. Sabrina had always hated the fact that I'd made it further in the finance world than she ever could, especially without riding on the Caldwell name. I wasn't reckless, I said, trying to steady my voice. The market changed. Everyone was caught off guard, I added, but he cut me off. Everyone except successful people, Aunt Valerie snapped. Everyone except your cousin, who stayed where I could shield her. Everyone except your brother Nathaniel, who just made junior partner at Sterling and Rhodes. The sting landed exactly where she intended. Sabrina, the ever-loyal niece who worked at Caldwell Strategic, was now head of client development. Nathaniel, the golden boy, had his face plastered across law firm brochures and billboards on Michigan Avenue. And me? I had dared to step out on my own, to build something without asking for permission. And I had failed. The annual Caldwell Foundation Gala is next Friday, she said coolly. It's best you don't attend. I won't have whispers about your situation ruining Sabrina's promotion. I stood slowly, my hands trembling at my sides. So that's it? I asked. I'm being erased? Because I lost a job? You erased yourself when you left this firm, she replied. I'm simply acknowledging the consequences. That night, I sat alone in my downtown apartment, once my sanctuary, now a mausoleum of unpaid bills, foreclosure notices, and unopened emails. My phone buzzed, a chorus of hollow concern. So sorry to hear what happened. Knew it was too risky, Lena. Maybe next time, listen to your family. And then the dagger, my mother. Darling, your aunt is right. Take time to regroup. Sabrina knows someone looking for an executive assistant. It's a steady job, no shame in that. executive assistant, from leading billion-dollar portfolios to booking someone else's flights. In a fit of cold rage, I hurled the phone across the room. It cracked against the wall. Finally, something in my control. A knock jolted me. Through the peephole stood Nathaniel, immaculate as ever, uncomfortable in a tailored gray suit. I opened the door, arms crossed. "What do you want?" "To help," he said. "I've been talking to some contacts. There's an opening at Everline Capital. They're rebuilding after a major acquisition. Need someone sharp to handle transitional strategy." I stared at him. "You don't have to take it," he added, "but they'd be lucky to have you." For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe, not because someone was offering me a lifeline, but because I knew I could still swim. "Let me guess," I said, cutting Nathaniel off. "Something entry-level, something safe, something more suitable for someone who failed?" He sighed. "Lena, be reasonable. Your reputation in the industry took a hit. The Caldwell name can still help you, if you're willing to accept help on our terms." "Our terms? Never mind. I don't need protection," I said firmly. "I need support. I need my family to stand beside me, not above me." Nathaniel ran a perfectly manicured hand through his hair, frustration flickering in his eyes. "That's not how this family works. You know that. We reward success." He gestured vaguely toward my half-packed apartment, where boxes sat like ghosts in the corners. "Not this." When he left, I sat still for a long time. And then I made a decision. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't play by their rules. I may have lost my job, my home, and my so-called support system, but I hadn't lost me. My skills, my fire, my ability to rebuild, they were all still intact. The following week, I liquidated everything. The Chanel coats, the rare artwork, even my beloved vintage poetry collection. Each sale felt like peeling away a version of myself that had been built for someone else's expectations. I wasn't collapsing. I was stripping down to rebuild with intention. On the night of the annual Caldwell Foundation Gala, while they toasted Sabrina's promotion beneath chandeliers and gold leaf ceilings, I zipped up a single suitcase and took one last look at my apartment. My phone buzzed. A message from Sabrina, of course. "Just announced my promotion. Wish you could have been here to see it. Then again, maybe it's better this way. Less awkward for everyone." Attached was a photo of her with Aunt Valerie, champagne in hand, both glowing under the ballroom lights. Behind them, my mother dabbed her eyes, overcome with pride, while Nathaniel schmoozed in the background, no doubt lining up his next big case. I stared at the image, fingers poised over the screen, then typed, "Congratulations, enjoy your moment. But remember this night, because it won't be the last time you hear my name." Then I hit block on all of them. I walked out of the apartment without looking back, hailed a cab to O'Hare, and boarded a flight to London. I had no idea what waited for me. But I had a plan, or at least the start of one. 5 years. That's what I gave myself. To rise again. To prove them wrong. And to make the Caldwell name remember what it cost to cast me out. My first stop was a tiny office in Camden. Charla, an old friend from my Everline days, had moved here after a messy merger. She'd started a boutique consulting firm, lean, scrappy, but quietly gaining traction. "Still serious about that open-door offer?" I asked, when she opened the door. Her grin said everything. "Let's build something dangerous. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens when I return, not just to the game, but to rewrite the rules." I don't think Charla ever expected me to show up at her door with nothing but a suitcase and a half-broken spirit. But she didn't hesitate. "The guest room's yours for as long as you need it," she said, throwing open the door to her cozy flat above a bakery in Camden. "But knowing you, you'll be back on your feet before I finish my next project." She wasn't wrong. Within a week, I'd transformed the tiny guest room into a war room. Laptop open, charts taped to the walls, the carpet covered in spreadsheets and sticky notes. Charla's boutique firm specialized in turnaround strategies for struggling businesses with high potential. It was gritty, under-the-radar work. Exactly what I needed. One evening, over takeout and late-night research, I looked up from my laptop. "There's something happening in the tech sector." Charla raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "Startups with insane potential, breakthrough ideas, but they can't get funding, Too small, too risky for the traditional players. I slid a report across the table. The big firms are playing it safe after the crash, but that just leaves space for someone bold. Charla smirked, handing me a chipped coffee mug. Sounds familiar. I ignored the jab. We could get in early, real early. The right bets now could multiply tenfold. Someone like you, she said. I nodded. Someone exactly like me. From that moment, my routine shifted into overdrive. By day, I supported Charla's clients, reworking financials, rebuilding models, finding growth paths no one else could see. By night, I combed through public records, tech incubators, and open-source databases, hunting down companies overlooked by the gatekeepers of venture capital. And then, the breakthrough. A tiny Manchester startup, barely 5 employees, had quietly developed an algorithm that could revolutionize predictive analytics in global markets. Everyone else dismissed them. Too young, too inexperienced, too unknown. But I didn't see risk. I saw myself. Scrappy, undervalued, brilliant. I want in, I told Charla the next day. I want to invest. She blinked. With what money, Lena? You sold everything. Not everything. I reached for the velvet pouch in my backpack and opened it to reveal the only piece of my old life I'd held onto, a rare blue diamond necklace passed down from my grandmother. Lena, Charla's voice softened. That's your emergency fund, your last backup. No, I said, already scrolling through London jewelry appraisers. This is the emergency, and this is the beginning of my comeback. The necklace sold for $375,000, 0 cents USD. I didn't hesitate. I invested every pound into the Manchester startup, and they gave me an advisor seat at the table. This wasn't just an investment. It was my rebirth. Within 6 months, the startup's algorithm caught the attention of top hedge funds and data firms across Europe. Within a year, they were acquired by a major Silicon Valley tech conglomerate for $18,700,000, 0 cents. My stake, worth just over $3,700,000, 0 cents. But honestly, the money was just the beginning. What mattered more was the credibility. My name started circulating, not as the disgraced ex-director of Everline Capital, but as the strategist who'd seen potential where no one else had. Soon, other struggling startups began reaching out. Young founders, underestimated innovators, teams with vision but no backing. They weren't looking for handouts. They were looking for someone who understood the intersection between finance and innovation. And that's how Monarch Enterprises was born. I named it after the monarch butterfly. Because what's more poetic than emerging from wreckage transformed? Charla came on as co-founder, bringing her consulting wisdom and a robust client network. We started small, but with purpose, hiring a lean team of analysts and moving into a sleek office in the heart of London's financial district. In just 3 years, Monarch had scaled far beyond my wildest projections. With satellite offices in Singapore, Dubai, and a pending expansion into New York, we weren't just a consultancy, we were a movement. Our portfolio, over $200 million, 0 cents in active assets. Our mission? Back the overlooked, bet on the underestimated, and win. I was in my corner office, skimming through documents from our latest acquisition in Southeast Asia, when my phone rang. Unknown number, New York area code. This is Lena Caldwell, I answered. A voice I hadn't heard in years responded. Lena, this is Caleb Monroe, from Everline. I leaned back, eyebrows raised. I remember. Right, well, he cleared his throat. I'm calling because Everline's in trouble. The market's shifted, and we're struggling to adapt. We've been following your success with Monarch, and we need help. I let the silence sit, sweet, sharp, satisfying. I'm sorry, Mr. Monroe, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Monarch doesn't usually work with firms lacking visionary leadership. You might try an executive recruitment agency. I hear they're great at placing assistants. Then I hung up, smiling. But that moment of satisfaction was shattered seconds later. A new email pinged. The subject line made my blood run cold. Caldwell Strategic faces hostile takeover attempt. I opened the article. A coordinated investor group was targeting my family's firm, citing alleged mismanagement, outdated practices, and questionable offshore dealings. I should have felt vindicated. After all, this was the downfall they once predicted for me. But something felt off. The language in the article was surgical, the weaknesses too specifically exposed. This wasn't just an attack, it was an inside job. Before I could dig deeper, my assistant burst through the door, tablet in hand. "Lena, you need to see this." She handed it to me. A financial bulletin blazed across the screen. Monarch Enterprises revealed as mystery buyer in Caldwell takeover bid. My heart stopped. Someone was using my name, or my company's, to take down the very empire that once cast me out. And it wasn't me. Somehow, without my knowledge, someone had used Monarch's international subsidiaries to purchase millions in Caldwell strategic bonds, bonds that, now aggregated, could be used to legally support the hostile takeover. But I hadn't authorized those transactions. Which meant, Charla? Silence. I stood, calling her name again, louder this time. But my office was empty. My co-founder, my partner, my friend, the woman who had opened her home to me when I was at rock bottom, gone. And on my desk, a single white envelope. I recognized the handwriting instantly, slanted, neat, measured. "Lena, I'm sorry. Valerie's offer was too good to walk away from. She says to tell you, family always comes first. Even when that family needs to learn a lesson." I sank into my chair as the final piece locked into place. Aunt Valerie, of course. The woman who had exiled me now wanted my empire. Not satisfied with pushing me out of her world, she wanted to bury mine too. But she had made one critical mistake. She underestimated the girl she cast out. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I'd never deleted, even when I promised myself I was done with them. "Lena," said Sabrina's voice on the other end, smooth as ever. "Took you long enough?" "Call off the takeover," I said flatly. She laughed. "Or what? You'll cry to Valerie? Oh wait, you can't. You're not in the family anymore." "No," I replied. "But the SEC would love to hear how illegally acquired Caldwell bonds were funneled into Monarch's portfolio using a forged authority code." Silence. "You're bluffing," she said, but I could hear the crack in her voice. "Am I?" I asked. "Check your inbox." Just before calling, I had attached every traceable document. Charla had betrayed me. But she'd also left digital fingerprints all over the shadow companies used in the bond purchase. "What do you want?" Sabrina snapped, the calmness gone now, replaced with fear. I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. "What I've always wanted, a fair shot. And thanks to you, I'm about to get it." "What are you planning?" she asked, urgency rising. "Check tomorrow's financial press. I think you'll find it enlightening." Then I hung up. I pressed the intercom. "Janet? Prep the main conference room. We're hosting some guests tomorrow." There was a pause. "Guests, ma'am?" "Yes, Caldwell Strategic's board of directors." Janet hesitated. "That's your family's company, are you sure?" I turned toward the photo still hanging on my wall. Sabrina's promotion gala 5 years ago. The champagne, the fake tears, the smirks. That night, they'd celebrated what they thought was my end. They were wrong. "Yes," I said, "it's time for a family reunion." To be continued. The morning of the board meeting broke crisp and golden over London's financial district. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, I watched as the city stirred to life. Buses weaving through narrow streets, pedestrians clutching coffees, and bankers filing into glass towers. In just a few hours, my family would step through these doors, not as the confident Colwells they once were, but as desperate players in a game they no longer controlled. "Miss Caldwell?" Janet poked her head in. "Your brother Nathaniel is here." Of course he was early. Nathaniel had always been the peacemaker, the negotiator. They'd sent him ahead, testing the temperature before the storm. I found him alone in the conference room, pacing. His usually polished demeanor was fraying at the edges, tie loosened, hair slightly tousled. He turned as I entered. For a long moment, we simply looked at each other. 5 years had passed, and yet in this moment, it felt like we were both back in that mahogany-paneled house, divided by titles and expectations. Lena, he said at last, you look successful? I took my seat at the head of the long glass table. Amazing what being thrown out of your family can do for a woman's ambition. He gave a tired smile. Victoria's not going to make this easy. Was she ever? She's convinced Aunt Valerie that this is all you're doing, he added, rubbing his temple. That you're orchestrating some grand revenge plan. That you manipulated Charla into staging this takeover. I laughed, sharp, cold. Let me guess. Poor Victoria betrayed by the sister she exiled. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sank into a chair across from me. I've been reviewing the numbers, Lena. Caldwell Strategic is drowning. Victoria's been covering up losses for years, over-leveraging, doctoring reports. I didn't realize how deep the cracks ran until I looked for myself. I folded my hands. The brilliant legal mind of the family, finally doing due diligence? He flinched. I trusted her. We all did. After you. I didn't leave, Nathaniel, I snapped. I was pushed. There's a difference. Before he could answer, Janet reappeared. They're here. I stood as the doors opened and the Caldwell delegation entered like they were storming a courtroom. First came Aunt Valerie, every inch the Titan in a sharp gray suit, her expression unreadable but eyes scanning the room with veiled curiosity. Then Sabrina, poised and practiced, wearing the same hollow smile from her promotion gala 5 years ago. My mother followed, quiet and tight-lipped. Then came the board. Family allies, childhood mentors, once witnesses to my humiliation. And finally, my father. Still imposing at 65, white hair, Italian suit, power in posture. He looked around the sleek, sunlit conference room, his gaze lingering on the gold monarch insignia on the far wall. You've done well for yourself, he said coolly. I didn't stand. I didn't offer a handshake. I didn't move. No thanks to any of you, I said simply, watching as they slowly, finally, came to me. Please, have a seat, I said, folding my hands. We have a lot to discuss. But Sabrina remained standing, both palms pressed firmly against the polished table. There's nothing to discuss, she said icily. Call off your little revenge scheme, Lena, and we'll pretend this childish tantrum never happened. I gave her a smile, not bitter, just patient, and pressed the button embedded on the side of my desk. The wall behind me flickered to life. The screen displayed a neatly organized sequence of documents: financial statements, offshore transfers, falsified expense reports, and internal emails flagged for ethics violations. You mean like how you forgot to report these quarterly losses to the board? I asked gently. Or how you forgot that using company capital for your personal investment shell in Monaco is a violation of fiduciary law? Or perhaps you simply forgot to disclose your Cayman accounts? Sabrina's face lost all color. Behind her, several board members leaned forward, squinting at the damning details. That's confidential, she stammered. How did you? Charla may have turned her back on me, I said calmly, but I've always kept my own records. Digital backups, security audits, off-site surveillance. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate why my company suddenly acquired controlling bonds in Caldwell Strategic? My father, Mr. Caldwell, rose from his seat, his jaw tight. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything, I said, rising to meet his eyes. I'm laying out facts. I turned to face the board. Sabrina has been quietly siphoning resources from the company for years. The takeover? She orchestrated it. Then she used proxies to make it appear hostile. Her goal was to regain control at a discounted value, after gutting the company's worth. She just needed someone to blame. I touched the screen again. More documents appeared. Wire transfers, VPN traces, false names, all leading back to her. The room exploded into chaos. Voices overlapped, chairs scraped, phones buzzed. Sabrina shouted over the noise, "It's not what it looks like." But her voice was drowned beneath years of evidence scrolling by in real time. Enough, my father barked. Silence fell. He turned to Sabrina, his expression carved in granite. Is this true? For the first time in her life, my cousin had no clever line, no mask. Uncle, I can explain. Mr. Caldwell, one of the senior board members, cut in. If these allegations are accurate, immediate steps must be taken. The Securities Authority won't need to get involved, I said, stepping forward. All eyes turned to me. Not if we resolve this here, today. My father's gaze narrowed. What are you proposing? I walked slowly around the table. Monarch Enterprises will purchase a controlling interest in Caldwell Strategic, will stabilize operations, restructure the debt, and restore transparency. The Caldwell name will survive. And Sabrina, he asked. I looked at her. She'll resign, effective immediately. You can't do this, she whispered. Actually, I said, smiling, I can, and unlike you, I'll do it legally. My father sank into the leather chair across from me, and for the first time in my life, he looked his age, every bit of his 65 years. The fire, the presence that once filled every room he entered, was gone. You're taking control of my company? He asked, voice raw. After all this time? No, Dad, I replied gently. I'm saving your company. There's a difference. I returned to my seat, folding my hands. You have 1 hour to decide. Otherwise, these documents go to the regulatory authorities, and the Caldwell legacy becomes a textbook case in corporate negligence. He didn't argue. He just nodded, slow, reluctant, and left the room with the board trailing behind him. That next hour was the longest of my life. I sat alone in my private office, the city of London buzzing below me. From my window, red double-deckers and black cabs drifted through streets I used to walk in quiet anonymity. Now, I sat on top of it all. Nathaniel stopped in briefly. For what it's worth, he said softly. I'm sorry. For not speaking up 5 years ago. For not seeing what Sabrina was doing. For all of it. I nodded once but said nothing. Some wounds ran deeper than apologies could reach. Eventually the door opened again. My father stepped inside. He didn't say anything at first, just looked around my office, the sleek desk, the monarch crest, the city at my back. The board approved your proposal, he said stiffly. Sabrina has resigned. The restructuring will be announced first thing tomorrow. I turned to face him. And? His eyes met mine, and for the first time, they didn't hold judgment, or skepticism, or condescension. They held respect. And, he paused, swallowing hard, I was wrong. About you. About everything. Yes, I said quietly. You were. He moved to leave, then stopped, his hand lingering on the doorframe. That night at the gala, when we toasted Sabrina's promotion, I looked up, remembering, you said we'd hear your name again. I did. I didn't believe you then, he admitted, voice cracking. I couldn't imagine this. He gestured around the room. I couldn't imagine you proving me wrong so spectacularly. And then he left. I sat in silence, emotions surging, relief, exhaustion, pride, something like grief. I had won. On my terms. I was no longer the exile. I was Lena Caldwell, founder of Monarch Enterprises, and the woman who turned legacy into leverage. But the victory felt heavier than I'd expected. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. It was my mother. She hovered awkwardly in the doorway. The caterers called, she said. They wanted to confirm for Sunday dinner. I blinked. Dinner? We've missed so many, she said, fidgeting. I thought, maybe, if you're not too busy. I looked at her, really looked. The worry lines, the gray near her temples. 5 years had aged us both. How much had she known? How much had she silently regretted? I hesitated. I'll check my schedule, I said. Then softer. But maybe. She nodded, understanding that, for now, this was all I could give. Change doesn't happen in a single conversation, and trust, once fractured, doesn't heal with apologies alone. It takes time, and this was a beginning. 1 month later, I sat in what used to be my father's office, now mine, at Caldwell Strategic's Manhattan headquarters. The view of New York City was exactly as I remembered it. Vast, glittering, full of noise and ambition. But everything else had changed. Sabrina had fled to the Cayman Islands, living off whatever she'd managed to tuck away in her offshore accounts before the walls closed in. Nathaniel had returned to his law firm, quieter, humbler, and for the first time in years we were rebuilding a real relationship. One call at a time. My father had stepped down from the CEO position. He still came into the office, but in an advisory role. Our weekly meetings were less formal now. We talked numbers, strategy, and slowly, hesitantly, family. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something close. Monarch Enterprises continued to soar, now globally recognized not just for its portfolio but for how it had salvaged one of New York's most storied institutions. As for Charla's betrayal, yes, it had cut deep, but it taught me how to lead with eyes open, heart guarded, and principles intact. That morning, Janet, still loyal as ever, brought in the day's papers. Headlines praised Caldwell Strategic's resurgence. Analysts credited Lena Caldwell's razor-sharp turnaround strategy, but it was a small envelope placed carefully on top of the stack that made me pause. Inside, an invitation to next month's Caldwell Foundation Gala, and at the bottom, in my father's familiar handwriting, "This time, you're not just invited. You're the guest of honor." I smiled. 5 years ago, I'd left this city with a suitcase, a cracked heart, and a promise to prove them all wrong. But I hadn't just proven them wrong. I'd proven myself right. I picked up my phone and dialed my mother. "About Sunday dinner," I said when she answered. "I'll be there." Because I've learned something over the years. Success isn't always about revenge. Sometimes real strength lies in letting people admit they were wrong, and knowing when to rebuild instead of destroy. I gazed out at the skyline, remembering the woman I used to be. She wanted payback. What she found instead was redemption, not just for herself, but for an entire legacy. The Caldwell Empire hadn't collapsed, it had evolved. And me? I wasn't the outcast anymore. I was Lena Caldwell, CEO of Monarch Enterprises and Caldwell Strategic, the woman who lost everything and built something better from the ashes. The prodigal daughter hadn't come home to beg for scraps. She came back to rebuild the house. And this time, it was built to last. This wasn't just a story about revenge. It was about rising, rebuilding, and reclaiming your worth when no one else sees it. If something in my journey spoke to you, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment below. Share your story, your comeback, or the moment you realized your value. And if you're still in the fire, don't give up. Your strength isn't in how loud you fight. It's in how quietly you rise. Subscribe if you believe in second chances and self-made triumphs, because this is only the beginning.